Welcome to Face Forward, the podcast, the series that takes you behind the scenes of the riveting world of clinical trial management. I am your host, Valerie Coveney, and I am thrilled to be your guide on this journey through the nuances of planning, executing, and navigating the clinical research landscape. We are welcoming today a guest with over 25 years of experience in the pharmaceutical and biotech industries. She's a recognized leader in quality and compliance, and her expertise spans regulatory strategy, inspection readiness, and operational excellence. Our conversation will focus on the upcoming ICH E6 R3 guideline revision and what it means for clinical research stakeholders as we approach its implementation in July 2025. Let's welcome Indero's VP of Quality and Compliance, Mélanie Pomerleau.
Hi, Valerie. So happy to be here with you to discuss about this important topic.
Okay, Mélanie, so could you give our listeners an overview of the main changes for the third revision?
Yes, for sure, Valerie. So one of the obvious change with this revision is the document structure. So it was completely revamped, and let's say you can find now a new annex, appendices, and we'll have to get used to it because like even for auditors, it's going to be a challenge because even the reference number of every article that they change too. So we'll have to get used to it. Another thing, well, is about GCP principle. They've been modernized with a lot of emphasis around quality by design, risk fit for purposes, and proportionality. So these themes you will see, you will find them in most of the section of the revision. This is the essence of many of the approaches that we have to take now in clinical trials. So you probably hear a lot about risk management and all those aspects of, let's say, the tolerance limit, etc. But how do you set that, and how do you focus on very, very important and critical aspects rather than all the aspects with the perfect data, right? You need just to now think about how you do things and why. Another thing is greater patient centricity. So in that revision, it encourages the early patient engagement. So for planning of a drug development program, but also for protocol development. So I think it's a great addition because patient can bring a lot. It can be on many, many aspects. Let's think about it, like even the complexity or feasibility for participant to come to a clinic and then have to go through all those let's say visits and procedures. And so is it realistic, and how, let's say, how can we think about a better way to approach this to make it feasible and have more protocol adherence? So this is an example. And also on the ethical side, how you presenting in an informed consent, how do you, let's say this is example where, let's say, the addition of the vision from the subject can be very interesting. Also, this guideline will facilitate, in fact, the innovative study design. Now it's no longer very straightforward design. Let's say we have many adaptive designs. We have to think about it, and the use of technology also that is growing. And let's think about like decentralized element, like remote consent, remote monitoring, home nursing. So we saw a lot of these concepts or approaches with the pandemic. So I think that everyone heard about decentralized, but let's say now what's interesting is that they are specifically mentioned as a method that you can use, let's say, to manage your trial. Before it was all deviation, right? Oh, well, going a remote consent is a deviation. Remote visit is a deviation. Everything was a deviation. We had so many planned deviations.
Yes.
So it was very heavy. Now at least we can do it, and we can adapt our SOP with this. And also to maybe one last is, but not the least, is to me the biggest addition is the entire new section on data governance.
Okay. So on this last point, could you explain for the audience what data governance is?
For sure. So I'll try to keep it simple. So what's data governance? Okay, so it's about, if I can summarize, it's really about having the right control in place to ensure the data integrity throughout the entire data lifecycle. So it means from the moment you create the data until the moment you will destroy it eventually. And let's say we can think about aspects such as social security, privacy, quality control, archiving, platform validation for sure. And if I may give some example that you should have in place, obviously you should have a set of SOP, let's say, for the governance of your validation of your platform. Also have a little bit more information on how you will actually administer those platforms, because it looks very easy. Oh, I give access and then it's done, and give a training. But okay, which training do you give for which user? Because you have like many type of users sometimes in the platform. So what do they need to have? There's a difference between someone having a read-only access and someone with an administrator role. Let's say they will have like a different requirement around what they need to know. So this is where you can put those information. You have to think about how you will do your check in that platform. Let's say access, and how you will make sure those data are actually of good quality. So all the data cleaning and SOP monitoring can also put audit in there, but you should have a full set. And I can continue with a lot of SOP, but basically it's everything covering, let's say, what you do from the very beginning until the end. And basically, let's say it's to make sure that your data remain trustworthy and protected.
Excellent. So back on the third revision here. So what have you noticed in terms of changes in inspections or audits?
I mean, since many years, like inspectors from FDA or Canada, I mean, they receive a lot of training already on data integrity, compliance systems, and they increase their collaboration. So meaning that they will eventually, or they already have like similar approaches. But let's say more specifically, in the last year, I could see a shift already because the draft guidance or was released for the ICH 603. And I had the opportunity to see few samples of observation from Health Canada, and clearly for each of these inspections, they had observation around access to the platform given and granted, let's say maybe before staff being delegated or removed very late. So they check that very much. Also now another aspect, electronic medical records. These systems were used for several years already, but now they ask for supporting documentation for the validation around those platforms, which was not the case before, right? So it was just like, oh, okay, you have do you have access? Who has access? And that's it. And maybe on the CRO side, we have a lot of audit also from sponsor. And what I can tell is I see a clear shift, right? If I compare to the previous years, so sponsor, they were always interested in computerized system validation, asking for documentation. But now what's obvious is they ask for more thing around the platform. So what's your periodic review and check over these platforms? They will ask for your documentation. Lately, we've been asked about audit trail review. Audit trail review is a concept in the industry that was known and let's say applied with some maybe of the larger organization also. But now it's clearly outlined in that guideline. So audit trail check is a point. So now we can expect if we don't do those activities, we can get an observation. So now they look at it. So that's few example, but I think it's showing already a shift here.
Very good. Melanie, what other changes in R3 really stood out to you?
Well, stood out. There are a lot of um, new things for sure, but let's say what I find, I would say, interesting in that revision is how it reinforces the accountability. And now we can no longer say, well, okay, it's everything is under the sponsor responsibility. This sentence that we used to say all the time, and ultimately we are responsible for sure as sponsor. But now there's more emphasis on being proactive on issue management across all parties. So and especially on data integrity. So now if you see something even if we're not the one that's implementing a platform and you start seeing an issue while using it, you cannot just say, well, it's not my fault. Well, the sponsor. Now you have to raise the concern. You have to take actions. So this is something I really like because it started with R2 with more accountability, but now they even increase more here in that revision. Also, some are really little changes, but that can make a big difference. Let's say that I find. So an example is they really specified in that guideline that the study-specific training may not be required for site staff
Okay.
if they do routine tasks. So may seems little, but now that they have more and more complexity in how let's say those trials are conducted, I think it's giving them the flexibility and it reduces the burden on some aspect at least, and maybe they can organize their work differently. So I think it's good that they did this and put that in the revision. And let's say I think of one or two other items. Let's say like essential document. We were used to have an appendix with the list of essential document before, after, during the trial. Very easy, very simple. Like and we were happy about it in a way because
Yes.
you know exactly what you look for. Now it's really more it's broader. It's really like the notion is now essential records and potential essential records. So it's more aligned with what we see now with the electronic trial master file. Before it was paper, so we had all those binders everywhere in the clinic or in the CRO. But now really we have to see those essential records like your entire archiving for study. So this is how I see it, and it was time that we move away from that specific little list because there are much more records to maintain. And maybe one last thing about the glossary. It's rare that we talk about glossary, but I
Yes.
found interesting that they added few terms like data acquisition tool, metadata. So it reflects a lot like the increased use of electronic platform. And another thing is trial subjects. So now it has been replaced with trial participant. And it may look like a small, but it's a very meaningful change that reflects the more patient-centric and inclusive approach that we have
Yes.
with the guidelines. So I think it's good you participate to a trial, right? You're not just a subject there, and
Yes.
they're a very important part of the trial. So that's why I like it too.
Very nice. And so we kind of mentioned the main changes. How do you think these differences will impact the sites, sponsors, CROs?
When you look at it at first, I mean, the document structure, because it changed so much, might
Mm-hmm.
look a bit overwhelming. However, in my perspective, I mean, these changes, let's say, have been in motion for so many years because, let's say, I was referring before to COVID-19 pandemic. We had also other guideline release such as ICH E8, which require also, let's say, more inclusive of, like to be more inclusive of the patient participation should be a little bit broader. Also, I think, let's say, also that we had very a lot of information during the release of the draft, and we had all those opportunities, let's say, to
Mm-hmm.
comment. So what I want to say basically is that if you you plan this a little bit in advance of time and you have a solid quality system, should not require a complete overhaul of your processes. You should be already there, and maybe you have like few things to adapt here and there, but it should be okay. So I think about it on the sponsor and CRO side. But that said, investigator side might face a bit more challenge, especially around computerized systems. Sometimes they rely a lot on what the vendor would tell them, and then they use their package, but they're not highly involved in managing those platforms and understanding like fully, let's say, what's the impact of using those platforms on their when they implement it. So that might be a little bit more of a challenge. And I think also that the CRE will have to become more familiar with these aspects to properly assess the site compliance, but also to feel more comfortable.
Okay. So you mentioned earlier the new version comes into effect in July 2025. And does this time frame impact the preparation? You mentioned it's not too much of a change to existing processes, but what should we know with that timeline?
Yeah, one obvious thing is you should know it's coming. Why I say this is because, I was so surprised lately. I was reading an article, and there was a survey there with a number of respondents, and it was like a high portion of these respondents that had not heard about it or didn't know about the details. I'm like, well, that's the first step, right? So you need to know that. So if you hear this podcast, then you're aware now. And after that, let's say the first step I would say you have to take is to do a gap analysis. This is a really standard approach for sure. So what you have to do is to look at your current systems, SOP. You look where you stand compared to those this new guideline, and then you prioritize what's more urgent, because you may have like many changes, but it's not like all of those changes that are required right away, and it will be very difficult to address all of them at the same time. So I would suggest that you prioritize them with criticality. And for sure, another component of this is the training. So I think it's key that the team members understand the most significant change and also the impact on their work. So they should have a little overview, maybe not to all details, but at least know what's coming. And what I would recommend also in complement to this training on the guideline per se is a training on data integrity, because it's essential aspects, but it's not always well understood, especially when it comes to electronic data. And I think everyone would benefit from that.
So we kind of covered R3. Based on what we see now from R3, what can we expect for R4?
Well, I'm sure they work on it already, right?
Yes.
Because between the first initial guideline and the R2, it was 20 years. Can you imagine that 20 years? So a lot of things. Wow. But after it was okay. Now it's 10 years. So maybe the next one will be 5 years. But let's say for sure, what I see coming is artificial intelligence. It should play a very big role in that next revision. Learning machine as well. But please don't wait for that revision before you look into those aspects, because it's coming very, very fast. So, but other than that, I'll let the regulator tell more about it.
Very good. Very good. So this concludes our episode for today. It was a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much, Mélanie.
Thank you, Valerie. I had a great moment with you.
As we conclude another illuminating episode of Face Forward, we find ourselves at the crossroads of science and progress. Remember that behind the jargon and statistics lie stories of unwavering commitment, meticulous observation, and the pursuit of evidence that shapes our understanding of health and disease. Stay at the forefront of knowledge and innovation and follow Face Forward on your preferred platform. My name is Valerie Kovney. Thank you for joining us. Until next time.